She was having tea alone until the Mafia boss's mother whispered, "Pretend you're my son's fiancée." Seraphine held the delicate porcelain teacup in her hands, feeling the warmth seep into her palms. The estate garden stretched before her like a painting, filled with roses whose petals glistened under the soft touch of the afternoon sun. Birds flitted from tree to tree, their songs mingling with the gentle hum of distant fountains. For a woman who had spent much of her life in shadows, this small moment of peace was a rare treasure. She sipped her tea slowly, letting the fragrant steam curl around her face. Each breath was a quiet act of meditation, a pause from the demands of the world she had known, a world of whispered rumors, half-truths, and unexpected betrayals. She liked it here alone, where the garden's walls seemed to hold her in a protective embrace. Yet the tranquility did not last. A soft rustle behind the hedges caught her attention. Seraphine's fingers tightened around the cup, her instincts sharp despite her quiet demeanor. The rustle became footsteps, slow and deliberate, carrying a grace that spoke of wealth and authority. "Seraphine," a voice said, low and smooth, almost a whisper. She turned, and there she saw her, Elena Verano, the matriarch of the powerful Don Verano family. Her presence was magnetic, her movements careful yet commanding. Elena's eyes, dark as polished onyx, studied Seraphine with a curious intensity. She smiled faintly, the kind of smile that hinted at secrets and intentions far deeper than mere courtesy. "You sit here alone," Elena said, her voice a velvet thread in the quiet garden. "It is unusual for someone like you, don't you think?" Seraphine straightened, hiding the tension in her shoulders. "I enjoy solitude," she replied, keeping her tone calm. "It allows me to think." Elena stepped closer, her gown brushing against the dewy grass. She lowered her voice further, leaning in just enough for only Seraphine to hear. "I have a proposition for you, a delicate one. You may refuse, but I suggest you listen carefully." Curiosity piqued despite herself. Seraphine set the teacup down and leaned slightly forward. "I'm listening," she said cautiously. Elena's eyes flickered with something unspoken, mischief, strategy, and perhaps a hint of kindness. "My son, Lucian Verano," she began, her tone softening, "has a reputation that precedes him. He is powerful, dangerous, and alone in ways that are unusual." She paused, letting her words hang. "I need someone to stand by his side. Not for love, at least not at first, but for appearances. A fiancé to be seen, nothing more." Seraphine blinked. Her mind spun with disbelief. The Verano family was notorious. Lucian Verano himself was a figure both feared and admired, a man whispered about in the city's darkest corners. To be near him, even for pretense, was to step into a world she had only observed from a distance. "Why me?" she asked, her voice barely more than a breath. Elena's gaze softened almost imperceptibly. "Because I see strength in you, hidden yes, but present, the kind of strength my son respects, and perhaps because I trust that you are clever enough to survive what comes next." Seraphine's heart pounded. Trust from a woman like Elena Verano was not given lightly. It was calculated, dangerous, and meaningful. Yet fear mingled with fascination, and she felt a thrill she could not ignore. "I don't know," she began, faltering. "I've never been part of that world. I wouldn't even know how to begin." Elena's lips curved into a gentle smile, the kind that could calm storms or summon them. "You will learn, slowly, carefully. You will have guidance and protection if you choose wisely." The words lingered, heavy with implication. Protection, she realized, was not something freely given by the Verano family. It was a currency, a promise, and a risk all at once. Seraphine's thoughts whirled. To accept would be to step into danger. To refuse might be to lose an opportunity that could never come again. She took a deep breath, the sweet scent of roses filling her senses, and nodded. "I'll consider it," she said cautiously. Elena's smile widened just enough to reveal a glimpse of satisfaction. She stepped back, her gown trailing like liquid shadow over the grass. "Good. Consider it well. But know this, my son is watching whether you know it or not, and he does not forgive hesitation lightly." With that, Alina turned, her presence fading among the hedges, leaving Seraphine alone with her racing thoughts. She picked up her teacup again, but the tea now seemed lukewarm and unimportant. Her mind was alive with visions of Lucian, of the man who could command entire rooms with a glance, who could move shadows like puppets, and whose eyes might pierce the very heart of her secrets. As evening approached, the garden's golden light deepened into a warm amber, and a soft breeze carried the scent of roses and approaching night. Seraphine rose, walking slowly along the winding paths, lost in thought. She felt a presence long before she saw him. Lucian Verano leaned against the terrace railing, his posture relaxed but his gaze unyielding. The fading sun caught the sharp planes of his face, highlighting the cold perfection in his expression. His eyes, dark and intense, locked onto hers, and she felt a shiver pass through her. "You were considering my mother's offer, I assume," he said quietly, his voice smooth but carrying an edge that hinted at warning. Seraphine swallowed hard, unsure how to respond. I am," she admitted. Lucian stepped closer, his shadow merging with hers. "Be aware," he said, not unkindly, "this is not a game. Those who enter my world find it difficult to leave." "I'm not afraid of challenges," she replied, surprising herself with the steadiness in her voice. A flicker of amusement passed through Lucian's eyes. "Courage is admirable," he said softly, "but this world will test more than courage. It will test your mind, your heart, and perhaps even your soul." Seraphine felt a sudden pull, part fear, part fascination. She realized that accepting Alina's proposition was no longer about appearances or protection. It was about something deeper, something unspoken stirring in her chest. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of roses and distant rain, and Lucian's gaze remained fixed on her. He turned slightly, pointing toward the estate. "Come inside. My mother will want to speak further, and the night waits for no one." Seraphine hesitated, one hand on the wrought iron railing, the other gripping her teacup. Every instinct screamed caution, yet every pulse of her heart seemed to beckon her forward. She took a step toward him, then another, until she found herself walking side by side with a man whose reputation alone could terrify nations. Inside, the estate was alive with whispers of old secrets. Portraits of stern ancestors lined the hallway, their eyes seeming to follow her. The chandeliers reflected light onto marble floors that echoed with every footstep. Seraphine could feel the weight of history pressing down on her, and yet she felt strangely alive. Alina awaited them in a quiet study, the room filled with the scent of sandalwood and old books. She gestured for Seraphine to sit across from her, eyes sharp yet maternal. "So," she began, "now that my son has seen you, the decision is yours. Will you step into the life we offer or remain in solitude?" Seraphine took a deep breath, her thoughts racing. She had glimpsed the danger, the power, the allure. And though fear whispered caution, another voice, the voice of longing, curiosity, and quiet courage, spoke louder. "I will do it," she said finally, her voice steady. "I will pretend." Alina nodded, satisfaction clear in the slight curve of her lips. "Good. Remember, appearances are only the beginning. The real test lies in understanding the man you will stand beside, and the family whose loyalty can protect or destroy you." Lucian's gaze met hers across the table, and for the first time, Seraphine felt that the man who had seemed untouchable was not so different from her. Perhaps he too carried the weight of solitude, the need for trust, and the secret longing for something real amidst the shadows. As they left the study, a storm rolled over the horizon, dark clouds spilling across the sky. The garden, once tranquil and sunlit, was now cloaked in shifting shadows. Seraphine looked up at Lucian, her pulse quickening. "You know," he said quietly, almost to himself, "this choice will change everything. There is no turning back." Seraphine swallowed, her eyes meeting his. "I understand," she replied, feeling the thrill of fear and anticipation mingle within her. And in that moment, as the first drops of rain began to fall, Seraphine realized that her quiet life of solitude had ended. The game of shadows, whispers, and hearts had begun, and she was at the center of it. The storm intensified, wind lashing the estate walls, yet Seraphine felt a strange calm in the chaos. For the first time, she sensed that danger and desire, fear and longing, were not enemies but companions guiding her toward a destiny she could not yet see. And somewhere in the garden, hidden in the growing shadows, eyes watched her, measuring, waiting, and anticipating the unfolding story between a quiet woman and a man who commanded darkness itself. The night had begun. The Verano estate was alive with a different kind of energy that evening. Chandeliers gleamed like captured stars, their light bouncing off polished marble floors. Shadows stretched across ornate tapestries, and the soft hum of conversation floated from room to room. Seraphine had never seen a place so full of life, yet so suffused with silent rules and unspoken threats. Lucian walked beside her, his posture relaxed yet impossible to read. Each movement seemed measured, precise, as though even a small misstep could signal weakness. Seraphine tried to match his pace, but every glance at him reminded her how little she knew of this world, and how much she was about to enter it. "My mother expects you to attend the evening gathering," Lucian said quietly, his voice low but firm. "Do not appear nervous, appear confident. Even if you do not feel it, confidence will protect you in ways that kindness cannot." Seraphine nodded, swallowing a lump of uncertainty. "I will do my best," she replied, forcing a steady smile. Lucian's eyes softened for a fraction of a second before returning to their usual intensity. "Good. Appearances are the first test. The real one comes later." The gathering had already begun when they entered the grand ballroom. The scent of roses, polished wood, and fine perfume filled the air. Guests in elegant attire moved gracefully, their laughter and conversation blending into a background melody of wealth and influence. Yet beneath the surface, Seraphine sensed tension. Subtle glances, whispered words, and brief pauses hinted at hidden power struggles. Elena appeared moments later, moving through the crowd like a conductor guiding an orchestra. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, briefly met Seraphine's before she nodded once, as if approving a silent assessment. Seraphine felt both nervous and strangely encouraged. Lucian approached a cluster of men and women, all smiling but with an edge of caution in their eyes. He introduced Seraphine as his fiancée, his tone casual yet commanding respect. The moment her name passed through the room, she felt it, the weight of expectation, the sense that every eye now measured her worth, her composure, and her intelligence. "Do not be afraid of their scrutiny," Lucian whispered. "They will test you. They want to know if you belong. Stand your ground without seeming defensive. Speak only when necessary. Observe everything else." Seraphine nodded, her heart pounding. She understood that tonight was not merely a gathering. It was a battlefield of subtle glances, hidden intentions, and veiled alliances. As the evening unfolded, Seraphine noticed small details that marked the importance of every gesture. The way a hand rested on a shoulder, the subtle tilt of a head, even the placement of a wine glass on the table spoke volumes. She began to realize that being Lucian's fiancée, even in pretense, was more than a role. It was a lesson in survival, patience, and perception. Lucian remained at her side, guiding her through introductions, offering small cues with a tilt of his head or a whispered word. Despite his presence, Seraphine could not ignore the curiosity burning in his dark eyes, as if he were measuring not just her composure but the thoughts and courage hidden beneath her calm exterior. Hours passed, and the night deepened. Seraphine moved through the room with cautious grace, observing, learning, and sometimes testing her own limits. She noted the subtle rivalries, the whispered alliances, and the careful strategies hidden behind polite smiles. Every gesture seemed purposeful, every conversation a battle disguised as a social exchange. At one point, a man with sharp features approached, bowing slightly. "Don Verano," he said with a polite smile, "you honor us with your presence, and your lady as well." Lucian nodded, polite yet distant. Seraphine felt a strange energy in the man's eyes, an intensity that suggested interest but not necessarily friendship. Seraphine offered a calm smile, keeping her voice steady. "It is a pleasure to meet you." She felt Lucian's gaze on her, evaluating, protective, yet curious. The small interaction taught her that charm and composure were weapons in this world. A single misstep, a faint hesitation, could reveal weakness. Later, during a quieter moment on the balcony, Seraphine and Lucian stood side by side, watching the city lights flicker below. The night wind carried the faint scent of rain, roses, and something intangible: danger, promise, and perhaps opportunity. "You are learning fast," Lucian said, his tone softer than before. "Faster than most who enter my world." Seraphine looked at him, surprised. I'm just trying to survive." Lucian's lips curved faintly, almost a smile. "Survival is the first step. But there is more than survival here. You are learning to read people, to understand intentions, and to recognize danger before it reaches you. That is rare." Seraphine felt a warmth in his praise, though it was mixed with a strange tension. Lucian was not a man who offered compliments lightly. Every word, every gesture seemed weighted with meaning. She realized that the line between respect and scrutiny was thin, and that earning trust in this world required intelligence, courage, and subtlety. Their quiet moment was interrupted by a soft rustling behind the balcony curtains. Seraphine tensed. Lucian's hand moved slightly toward her, not touching but close enough to signal protection. A folded piece of paper slipped through the gap in the curtains, landing lightly at her feet. Seraphine picked it up cautiously. The handwriting was unfamiliar, elegant but urgent. She read the words slowly, feeling a chill run down her spine. "The Don is not what he appears to be. Trust no one, especially him." She looked at Lucian, her heart racing. His eyes met hers, dark and unreadable. For a fleeting moment, she wondered if he already knew, or if this was a warning meant to test her. "Who sent this?" she asked softly, careful to keep her voice steady. Lucian's expression remained unreadable. "That is not your concern," he said quietly, "but it will be yours soon enough. Appearances are one thing, truth is another." Seraphine's pulse quickened. She realized that this evening, meant to be a lesson in poise and composure, had revealed a dangerous reality. The world she had entered was filled with hidden threats, and her safety could not be assumed. She had stepped into a masquerade where loyalty was uncertain, and even a word or glance could shift the balance of power. As the night deepened, Seraphine moved carefully through the remaining guests, her senses heightened. Every gesture, every word, every glance seemed loaded with meaning. She realized that even the smallest detail could have consequences she might not yet understand. Lucian remained near her, his presence both reassuring and intimidating. She felt an unspoken connection forming, one born not from affection but from shared experience and mutual understanding of the dangers surrounding them. It was a fragile bond, yet it gave her courage she had not known she possessed. The evening drew to a close. Guests departed in carriages, the sound of horses' hooves echoing through the night. Seraphine stood in the empty ballroom, feeling the weight of the evening settle on her shoulders. Lucian approached, his expression calm but thoughtful. "You survived your first test," he said quietly. "Not everyone does, most falter under scrutiny or fear. You did not." Seraphine nodded, a mixture of relief and exhaustion washing over her. I want to learn," she admitted. "I want to understand this world even if it frightens me." Lucian's eyes softened slightly. "Good. Fear is not weakness, it is awareness. But remember, awareness is only valuable if paired with action. You will need both in the days to come." As they walked toward the estate's inner chambers, A sudden sound made them both pause, a faint shuffle in the shadows of the hallway. Seraphine tensed instinctively, her mind racing through possibilities. Lucian's hand moved near hers, protective yet cautious. "Stay close," he murmured. "We are not alone." A figure emerged from the shadows, a man she had seen earlier among the guests, the same sharp-eyed stranger. He paused at the doorway, bowing slightly but with eyes that glimmered with something unreadable. "You have made quite an impression," he said smoothly, his tone polite yet edged with subtle warning. "It will be interesting to watch you navigate this world." Lucian's gaze narrowed slightly, and Seraphine felt a surge of tension. Every movement, every word, seemed charged with hidden meaning. The night had begun with elegance and charm, but now it was clear that danger and intrigue lurked beneath every surface. Seraphine understood that survival would require more than composure. She would need courage, intelligence, and perhaps the ability to trust someone she barely knew. And yet, as she glanced at Lucian, she felt a strange sense of certainty. He would not allow harm to come to her, at least not without consequence. The storm outside rumbled faintly, echoing the unrest she felt within. She realized that this world of shadows, whispers, and hidden power was far more complex and far more dangerous than she had imagined. Yet amidst the tension there was a spark of something else: anticipation. A feeling that she had entered not merely a world of danger, but one of discovery, challenge, and perhaps connection. And as the candle flames flickered in the empty ballroom, casting long shadows across the marble floors, Seraphine felt the truth settle in her chest. This was only the beginning. The masquerade had begun, and every step forward would demand courage, cleverness, and perhaps a touch of daring she had not yet discovered. The Verano estate was quiet now, but quiet did not mean safe. The grand hallways, with their polished marble floors and looming portraits of ancestors, seemed to hold a tension that Seraphine could feel in her bones. Each echo of her footsteps sounded like a whisper, as if the walls themselves were watching her. Lucian walked beside her, silent and deliberate, his gaze sweeping over every corridor, every shadow. He had allowed her more freedom that evening, yet every move she made was measured, observed, noted. Seraphine understood that in this world, caution was as essential as courage. "I need to tell you something," Lucian said suddenly, breaking the quiet. His voice, low and steady, drew her attention immediately. "Not everyone in this house is what they seem. Appearances are deceiving and trust is scarce." Seraphine nodded, her fingers tightening around the edge of her dress. "I've felt that," she admitted softly. "Tonight, everything felt like a puzzle. People were smiling, but I sensed tension everywhere." Lucian's eyes darkened slightly. "You are learning faster than I expected. That awareness, it may save you." He paused, then took a deep breath. "There is more you need to know about me, about my family, and the dangers that surround us." Seraphine turned to him, heart pounding. She had stepped into this world by choice, yet the reality of it was far more intense than she had imagined. "I'm ready," she said. "Tell me." Lucian's expression softened just enough for her to see a hint of the man beneath the formidable exterior. "My family carries a curse," he began, his voice quiet as if speaking aloud could summon it into reality. "It is not one of magic alone, though whispers speak of that. It is a burden of legacy, a shadow of betrayal and violence that has followed us for generations. And I am bound by it." Seraphine listened, fascinated and fearful at once. "A curse," she repeated. "What does it mean?" "It means that danger is never far," Lucian replied, his eyes locking on hers. "Enemies lurk in every corner and some are closer than you imagine. The life I lead, even as powerful as I appear, is a life lived with constant vigilance. One wrong move, one misplaced trust, and everything could fall apart." Seraphine felt the weight of his words settle in her chest. She realized then that the world she had stepped into was far more perilous than any social gathering, any whispered rumor. And yet, Alongside the fear, there was a spark of determination. She would not falter, not now, not ever. "You are not alone," Lucian said, his voice softer now. "I will not allow harm to come to you, but you must learn quickly. Tonight, the real tests begin." Before she could respond, a sudden noise echoed from the shadows, a sharp, metallic sound that made her heart leap. Lucian's hand moved instinctively, brushing hers briefly in a protective gesture. Seraphine followed his lead, moving cautiously toward the sound, every nerve alert. They entered a small, hidden corridor, rarely used, lined with old portraits and fading tapestries. There at the far end stood the sharp-eyed stranger from the ballroom. His presence alone was enough to make Seraphine's pulse quicken. "You are persistent," he said smoothly, bowing slightly. "I admire that, but persistence can be dangerous in your world." Lucian's eyes narrowed. "Leave," he said quietly, the calm authority in his voice leaving no room for argument. The man hesitated, then straightened, his expression unreadable. "For now," he said, before disappearing into the shadows as silently as he had appeared. Seraphine exhaled slowly, feeling a mixture of relief and tension. Lucian's gaze lingered on her, assessing, protective. "This world is full of people like him," he said. "Some allies, some enemies, something in between. You will need to recognize them all, quickly." The hours passed in a blur of whispered strategies and cautious exploration. Seraphine learned to move with purpose, to read intentions in subtle gestures, and to notice when a shadow lingered too long in the corner of her vision. She realized that survival in this world was not about strength alone. It was about perception, patience, and the courage to act when the moment demanded it. Lucian guided her through every encounter, never letting her feel entirely unprepared, yet never fully protecting her either. He wanted her to understand, to learn, to grow stronger. And Seraphine found herself responding not with fear but with determination, each success building her confidence, each challenge sharpening her instincts. Days turned into nights, and the masquerade they maintained became more intricate. Every social appearance, every conversation, every smile was a carefully choreographed dance. Seraphine found herself becoming attuned to the subtle rhythms of this dangerous world, the tilt of a head, the placement of a hand, the flicker of an eye. One evening, as the estate slept under a blanket of silver moonlight, Lucian led Seraphine to a secluded terrace overlooking the city. The wind was cool, carrying the scent of rain and roses, and the distant hum of the city seemed far away. "You have changed since we first met," Lucian said quietly. "You move with awareness now, with intelligence, with courage." Seraphine looked at him, her heart fluttering. "I have to," she said softly. "If I don't, I could fail or worse." Lucian's eyes met hers, dark and intense. "You will not fail. I will not allow it. But you must understand, the world we live in does not forgive mistakes lightly." Before she could respond, a sudden movement in the shadows made her gasp. A figure emerged, a man she had never seen before, dressed in dark clothing and moving with lethal precision. In his hand, a dagger glinted faintly in the moonlight. Seraphine's instincts screamed danger. Lucian's hand moved to her arm, steadying her without a word. His eyes, sharp and alert, tracked the man's every movement. "Stay behind me," he said softly, his voice calm but firm. The stranger moved closer, silent and deadly. Seraphine's breath quickened, and she felt fear prick at the edges of her resolve. But alongside the fear was a strange clarity. She would not falter, not when she had come so far. Lucian stepped forward, his presence commanding and impossible to ignore. The man hesitated, then lunged. The world seemed to slow. Seraphine watched as Lucian moved with precision, disarming the stranger and forcing him to retreat. She realized in that moment that Lucian was not just a figure of power. He was a protector, a force to be reckoned with, and a man whose strength was as much about strategy as it was about skill. When the danger passed, Lucian turned to her, his expression unreadable. "You must understand," he said quietly, "that threats come from many directions. Some you will see, some you will not. And some will come from those you trust most." Seraphine nodded, feeling the weight of his words. She realized that her journey into this world had only just begun, and that courage alone would not be enough. She would need intelligence, perception, and the ability to trust, not blindly but wisely. As the night deepened, they returned to the estate's inner chambers. Seraphine felt a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. She had faced danger and survived, learned more in a single evening than she had in a lifetime, and glimpsed the complexity of the man beside her. Lucian watched her with an intensity that made her heart race. "You have proven yourself," he said quietly, "but the real challenges are yet to come, and they will test not just your courage but your heart, your mind, and the bond you share with me." Seraphine felt a shiver run through her. The bond they shared was fragile, unspoken, yet undeniable. She understood that their connection was no longer simply pretense. It was something deeper, something that neither of them fully controlled. "Then I will face them," she said softly, her voice steady. "Whatever comes, I will face it." Lucian's gaze softened for a fleeting moment, and he nodded. "Good, we will face them together." Yet even as they spoke, shadows shifted in the corners of the estate. Unseen eyes watched, measuring, waiting, calculating. The world they had entered was treacherous, full of hidden agendas and quiet betrayals. And somewhere, in the darkened corridors of the Verano estate, a figure prepared for a strike that neither Seraphine nor Lucian could yet anticipate. The night was far from over. The storm had grown fiercer by the time night fell fully over the Verano estate. Rain pelted the windows, the wind rattled shutters, and the distant rumble of thunder shook the walls. Inside, the house remained calm, or at least outwardly so, as if nothing could touch the legacy and power that had been built over generations. But Seraphine knew better. She had felt the danger lurking in shadows, had sensed the hidden threats, and had learned that power could be as deadly as it was alluring. She moved quietly through the corridors, her gown whispering softly against the marble floor. Her hands trembled slightly, though not from fear, rather from anticipation. Tonight, everything would be tested. She had survived the masquerade, had faced the sharp-eyed stranger, and had navigated the treacherous social games of the Verano estate. Now it was time for the ultimate trial, a confrontation that would determine not only her safety, but the future of her bond with Lucian. Lucian met her in the study, his expression calm but unreadable. His dark eyes glimmered with a storm of emotion she could not name, concern, calculation, and perhaps something closer to trust. "The threat has returned," he said quietly, his voice low and steady. "And it is closer than before. This is not a test of appearances. This is real." Seraphine's heart pounded. She had known danger was never far, but the immediacy of it made every instinct in her body heighten. "What do we do?" she asked, keeping her voice steady despite the tension rising in her chest. "We act together," Lucian said simply. "There is no room for hesitation and no place for doubt. You have proven yourself before, Seraphine. Trust your instincts. They will guide you as much as mine." She nodded, feeling a surge of determination. Whatever came, she would not falter. The woman she had been, the quiet observer of life, was gone. She was now a participant, a force to be reckoned with, a companion to a man whose world was full of shadows and intrigue. The first sign of danger arrived as a sudden crash echoed from the main hall. Lucian's hand moved instinctively to her arm, guiding her silently to a hidden corridor. The sound of footsteps followed, deliberate and threatening, accompanied by a whisper of movement too swift for casual observation. "They are here," Lucian said quietly, his voice edged with controlled intensity. "Stay close. Do not make a sound unless I signal." Seraphine's heart raced, but she did not falter. She had learned much in the days since she had entered this world, the subtle art of observation, the strength in courage, and the necessity of trust. Tonight, All those lessons would be put to the test. As they emerged from the shadows into the main hall, Seraphine saw him, the sharp-eyed stranger now fully revealed, a figure cloaked in determination and menace. But this time, he was not alone. Other figures emerged from the shadows, silent and coordinated, clearly prepared to strike with precision. Lucian stepped forward, his posture commanding, his presence magnetic. "Enough," he said calmly, yet with the authority of a man used to being obeyed. "Leave now and I may show mercy. Step closer and you will face consequences you cannot imagine." The stranger hesitated, as if measuring the risk before signaling the others. They lunged. The next moments unfolded in a blur of motion. Lucian moved with calculated precision, disarming and disabling the attackers with skill honed over years. Seraphine felt the adrenaline surge within her as well. She moved instinctively, recalling the lessons she had learned, when to observe, when to act, and how to use the environment to her advantage. She guided one attacker into a narrow corridor, forcing him to stumble, then used a heavy curtain to shield herself and delay another. Even amidst the chaos, Seraphine felt a strange clarity. Fear had not clouded her mind. She and Lucian moved as a unit, each aware of the other, each anticipating the next move. Trust had been tested before, but now it was absolute. After what felt like an eternity, the intruders retreated, either defeated or convinced of their inability to succeed. Lucian stood in the center of the hall, his chest rising and falling with controlled breath. Seraphine approached, trembling slightly, yet triumphant. "You were remarkable," Lucian said quietly, his voice softer now. "You did not hesitate. You acted with intelligence, courage, and awareness. Few could have survived that." Seraphine felt a warmth bloom in her chest, not from pride alone, but from the realization that she had faced the darkness of this world and had not faltered. "We survived," she said softly. "Together." Lucian's eyes met hers, and for the first time the intensity in them was not just calculation or caution. It was acknowledgement, respect, and something deeper, something unspoken that neither dared yet to name. The storm outside had not ceased, yet inside the estate there was a moment of calm. The danger had passed, but the tension lingered, a reminder that this world was never without risk. Seraphine understood that their victory was temporary, yet it carried a significance far beyond mere survival. It was proof that she belonged in this world, that she could face its shadows, and that the bond between her and Lucian had been forged in fire and fear alike. Later in the quiet of the study, Lucian finally allowed himself to speak more openly. "There is more than danger here," he said, his voice low but gentle. "There is trust, and there is connection, and for the first time in years I believe I am not alone in facing what comes." Seraphine felt her heart tighten. She had come into this world as a stranger, a woman who sought only quiet and solitude. Now she realized that she had found something unexpected, a partnership, a connection that transcended the pretense of engagement and reached into the realm of trust and shared strength. "You have changed me," Lucian continued, his dark eyes reflecting the flickering candlelight. "You have shown me that courage and kindness can exist alongside power and responsibility. That strength does not require isolation. That," he paused, searching for words, "that there can be hope even in darkness." Seraphine felt a lump rise in her throat. "And you've changed me," she whispered. "You've shown me a world I never imagined, and yet a world where I can be stronger than I thought." They stood in silence, the storm outside matching the tumultuous emotions within. For a moment there was no fear, no shadows, no danger, only the quiet understanding that they had faced darkness together and emerged not broken, but transformed. But even in that moment of peace, the world of the Verano estate remained alive with unseen threats. The shadows in the corners seemed to stir, and Seraphine knew that vigilance would always be necessary. Yet she also knew that she would not face it alone. As dawn approached, the storm subsided, leaving the estate bathed in the soft glow of early morning light. Seraphine and Lucian walked through the garden, the roses glistening with rain, the air crisp and fragrant. For the first time, the estate felt less like a place of fear and more like a place where possibility and promise existed alongside danger. Lucian stopped near a fountain, its waters sparkling in the rising sun. "We have faced many tests," he said, turning to her, "and we will face more. But now we have something stronger than fear, something worth protecting. And I trust that together we can endure whatever comes." Seraphine reached out, taking his hand gently. "We will," she said softly, "together." The bond they had formed, once a pretense, now real, was solidified not by words alone but by shared experience, trust, and courage. They had faced shadows, rivalries, and threats that might have broken anyone else. But they had emerged stronger, more aware, and more connected than either had expected. As they looked out over the estate, the city beyond bathed in the golden light of morning, Seraphine felt a sense of clarity. The world she had entered was dangerous, complex, and full of hidden perils. But it was also a world where she could belong, where she could be brave, and where love and trust could grow even in the midst of darkness. Lucian squeezed her hand gently, a silent promise that whatever came, they would face it together. And for the first time, Seraphine believed him, not just as the powerful Don Verano, but as a man capable of loyalty, courage, and love. The night of storms and shadows had passed. A new day had begun, filled with hope, strength, and the promise of what they could build together.